In the 2020 campaign, Senator Elizabeth Warren has made much of her refusal to have any PACs or any groups that are going to be raising money for her. However, no other candidates have made such a claim. It is expected there will be a lot of money. We've seen it pouring in already for several of the candidates. The question is, are they going to identify who gives them that money? Now, some of this is handled in the regular process, but some of it remains hidden. And there's a letter now in front of me. I have a copy of it that was sent to the candidates. Michael Beckel will explain it. Michael is the manager of research, investigations, and policy analysis at Issue 1. He is tweeting at MJ Beckel and is with us in the studio. Thanks for coming in, Michael.
Thanks for having me, Tim.
All right, let's talk. To whom it may concern as the first quarter campaign finance filing deadline of 2019 approaches, we, the undersigned organizations, urge you to publicly disclose information about your campaign's bundlers on a regular basis during the 2020 presidential campaign. What prompted this letter?
Well, even as candidates are raising tremendous amounts of money from grassroots donors, many of them are also out there trying to woo wealthy donors, and presidential candidates have long used individuals known as bundlers to help them raise that kind of campaign cash. These are people who turn to their friends, their social contacts, their business associates, and ask them for money, and the campaigns credit them for these quote-unquote bundles of campaign cash that they help a campaign raise. Sometimes these are literal bundles of checks, or more recently, electronic contributions that all have the same sort of memo code on them, so they get credited to this individual who, in some ways, through this fundraising activity, is currying favor with these candidates, earning their esteem and respect. And in many cases in the past, both Democratic and Republican administrations have often rewarded these big money campaign funders and big money campaign fundraisers with positions such as ambassadorships or other government postings. So this was a call by Issue 1 and 15 other organizations to ensure that there is adequate transparency and accountability in the fundraising this presidential season.
Let's talk a little bit more about that, what bundlers do. For example, if I have a friend who happens to be a business owner somewhere in my hometown, and I say, look, will you have a party for me, or will you go out there and try to collect some money for me? And that person goes out and collects money from, say, 20 of his closest friends. Are they still subject to the same limitations that an individual can use to donate? And how transparent must their donations be? Or how does it work in terms of reporting donations made to the campaign through bundlers?
That's right. By law, individuals are limited in how much money they can contribute to any individual candidate. So you can give up to $5,600 to a single presidential candidate, with half of that money going to their primary bid and half of it going towards their general election bid. So no individual can contribute more than $5,600, and all individuals who give at least $200 will be disclosed in these campaign finance reports that are regularly filed with the Federal Election Commission. And the first big FEC reporting deadline is coming up on Monday. And so all throughout the next 2 years, folks will be able to see who is giving money to presidential candidates based on the people who are giving at least $200 or more. But what we don't see is these networks that are operating behind the scenes. If somebody's going out and soliciting their friends, their business associates, their social contacts, being able to say, hey, will you come to this event that I'm hosting? Everybody, needs to cut a check for $5,600 or $2,800 or whatever, that minimum contribution threshold is. If that individual is getting credited for this type of fundraising activity, they're earning clout and earning favor with the candidate by hosting these kind of events. And that's the type of activity that we know is going on in a lot of these campaigns. That's activity that Republicans and Democrats alike have disclosed in the past, saying these are the top individuals who are raising money for my campaign. This is something that President George W. Bush did, that Republican Senator John McCain did, that President Barack Obama did, that former Secretary of State Hillary Clinton did. And we are sending this letter today in part because we don't want this to be an area where there's backsliding, where the norm is shifting, and we want to make sure that candidates are fully committed to transparency and accountability when it comes to the campaign funds that they're raising.
So the idea is that individuals who donate, still, that donation would be reported. The question is about how this bundling takes place. And let me quote from the letter for people who are listening. Your campaign is already required by law to regularly disclose detailed information about any federal lobbyists who bundle campaign contributions on its behalf. Implementing a robust bundler disclosure system that publicly displays information about all individuals who raise $50,000 or more for your campaign would help demonstrate your commitment to transparency as you seek your party's presidential nomination. So your concern, Michael Beckel, is not so much about that individual with the $5,600 that is donated between the primary and the general election, but rather the individual who's in charge, the surrogate, if you will, for the campaign, who gets that party of 20, 30, 40, 50 individuals together, and whether that person, by virtue of his or her ability to get that money, gets undue influence with the candidate. Is that the concern that you have?
That's correct. We know in the past you had candidates who disclosed varying amounts of information about these types of things. And in some cases, bundlers are out there raising hundreds of thousands of dollars for a candidate, if not millions of dollars for a candidate. And sometimes these are individuals who are later nominated for ambassadorships or positions on government commissions. And bundling is a real way that they can curry favor and potentially gain undue influence. So being able to know who these individuals are helps the public and the press hold any candidate accountable. Again, this has been a long-standing bipartisan tradition, and there's really no reason that the candidates running for office this year shouldn't implement a robust disclosure system.
Now, one of the things that I mentioned at the top of our conversation, Michael, that Elizabeth Warren, senator from Massachusetts, has suggested she's not going to have a super PAC raising money. This is separate from that, though, right? In other words, this can still raise a lot of money. It's not a super PAC that's hidden, but there is a question about the people who are the bundlers, and that would be one area where she could still raise money and be true to her promise about super PACs, right?
She could still be true to her promise about super PACs. Senator Warren has also said that she's not hosting these types of events where she's trying to woo wealthy donors. The events that she's been hosting and that Senator Bernie Sanders has been hosting are typically focused on people giving any amount. Small dollar donors are invited to those types of events, but most of the other candidates in the race are out there. There's been a number of stories written about the wealthy donors, business executives, and the like who are hosting candidates at small soirees, being able to do these intimate fundraising galas. And these types of fundraisers are often a way for these donors to gain influence that the general donor or general voter doesn't have. And so in some ways, Senator Warren and Senator Sanders are trying to flip the fundraising script on its head and rely more and more on grassroots donors. But at the same time, any candidate could be trying to credit donors who are going out raising big money on their behalf, even if they're not showing up at those events. They could still have some sort of system in place should they want to be tracking who's raising money on their behalf internally for the campaign. And if they've got that kind of internal system going on, no matter if you're a Democrat or a Republican, this letter was sent to candidates in both parties to say, if you've got that kind of internal tracking system, we want that to be publicly disclosed this year as the campaign unfolds.
And Michael, I have the letter in front of me, but I don't have the signatures. Who's the undersigned on this?
So this group, this letter was ultimately signed by 16 organizations across the ideological spectrum. We've got groups including Issue 1. We spearheaded the effort, but we've got the Campaign Legal Center, the Center for Responsive Politics, which runs the website opensecrets.org, Common Cause, the League of Women Voters, the National Legal and Policy Center, the Project on Government Oversight, Public Citizen, Represent Us, the Sunlight Foundation, Take Back Our Republic, a host of organizations all across the ideological spectrum, some right-leaning, some left-leaning, some down-the-middle nonpartisan organizations, a lot of the organizations that are focused on tracking money in politics, and a lot of the other organizations who simply want to make sure that big money doesn't have an undue influence in our political process.
And the letter's going out today, you say?
That's right.
All right. So we'll have to wait and see who responds and how they respond, and we'll do that with a follow-up conversation. For people who want to see the letter, can they go online and see this, Michael?
All this information, the letter that we're sending to the candidates, is on Issue One's website at issue1.org.
Michael Beckel, thanks for coming in.
Thanks so much.
Michael Beckel, Manager of Research, Investigations, and Policy Analysis at Issue One. Go to the website, or you can tweet to Michael at MJ Beckel.